Saudi Arabia?
Of course, yes.
How do you feel about talking to us without your veil? Do you prefer to be seen with a veil or without one?
No, I prefer without.
And how about you?
I prefer without it.
Why do you think you've been made to wear a veil?
It is Islam custom.
It's traditions of our country, but I prefer without it.
When in other countries, in England, in America and Canada and countries like that, girls of your age would be out dancing at night with their boyfriends and all that sort of thing, going to parties.
Yes.
Now, you're not allowed by your religion to do this. Do you feel you're leading a very dull, unexciting life?
No, I prefer our society, and I like to dance also, but not like the others do.
You don't think that you have a dull life compared with girls
No.
in other countries?
No.
The headmistress of this enlightened school, perhaps ironically, is an Egyptian. She insists that the girls remove their veils the moment they set foot inside the school walls.
For one reason, it's much more practical for girls to move around without their veils on. Then we didn't have any men teachers, and all the supervisors are women. If they're supposed to veil, they're supposed to veil from men. So there's no reason why they should put the veils on if all the people in charge of the girls inside school are women.
When they leave school each day, the girls have to put their veils back on. We may have been allowed to gaze upon them in the flesh, but in some of their homes, even their fathers and brothers are not yet allowed to do that. The TV mast is probably the most prominent symbol of King Faisal's determination to lead his country into the 20th century. But this project too had near disastrous labor pains. The religious leaders agreed to the introduction of television on the condition that women should be shown only in subordinate roles to men. All went comparatively smoothly until the first night a woman appeared on the screen. Hours later, the television station, like the school before it, was wrecked. The ringleaders of the riot were beheaded. The most graphic recent example of the sort of religious bigotry King Feisal is fighting came to light last January when the vice president of the Islamic University in Medina insisted that the earth was in a fixed position and did not rotate. Anyone who professed otherwise, he said, would utter infidelity and deviation, because such an act is a charge of falsehood toward God, the Koran, and the Prophet. Throughout Saudi Arabia, nothing but Muslim religious institutions are allowed to function. Yet, religious police still stalk the streets with their canes to make sure that everyone goes to the mosques to pray. Shopkeepers who do not close down when the religious police pass by with their shouts of Salah, Salah, pray, pray, are liable to be carted off to jail and flogged. But I found evidence to suggest that a European can always slip under half-drawn shutters and find a shopkeeper ready to serve mammon instead of God. The bright neon lights that wink so provocatively in the night are so misleading they are almost an hallucination. Although there is said to be a rapidly rising demand from Saudis for black market whiskey and gin at £8 a bottle, alcoholic drinks are absolutely prohibited, even to foreign diplomats. There are also no official public cinemas and no dance halls, and such things as nightclubs and casinos are still regarded as immoral. For most Saudi town dwellers, the only 20th century relief from the gloom of Arabian Nights is television. But television is controlled by the government and censorship is severe. So severe that one night, several weeks ago, Saudi viewers were denied the fun of seeing Mickey Mouse being rewarded with a kiss from his wife, Minnie Mouse. The censor's scissors fell just before their lips met. As more and more Saudis make contact with the outside world, Will they be content to go on accepting the old ideas, or will they insist on transplanting new ones, direct from London, Paris, New York and Beirut? But for an economic miracle in 1938, there could have been no revolutions of any sort in Saudi Arabia. The miracle, of course, was oil, black gold. Oil royalties are now gushing into Saudi Arabia's coffers at the rate of just over £200 million a year. The giant oil refinery of the Arabian American Oil Company at Ras Tanura on the Persian Gulf is now producing over 200 million barrels of crude oil every day. In the league table of the world's largest oil producers, Saudi Arabia has moved up to 5th position. If President Nasser's long-term aim really is to dominate South Arabia with a view then to asserting at least his political influence in Saudi Arabia, it's generally agreed that his prime objective must be to get his hands on Saudi Arabia's oil. When King Feisal and President Nasser met last August to sign the Yemen peace treaty, they kissed and shook hands. The question now, of colossal importance to the West, especially Britain, is whether the two men can ever again resolve their differences with a shake of their hands. If they can't, there seems no alternative to war. I began my interview with King Feisal by asking him if he thought the removal of the British military presence from Aden would make the chances for peace in the Middle East better or worse.
What we would really like is for Southern Arabia to get its full independence. As for the problems of keeping peace and stability in Southern Arabia, these can be solved only by the people themselves. We are glad to know that they will be getting independence, which we have called for on their behalf several times. But they must use that independence wisely, because the first duty it imposes upon them is to keep their national unity and to agree among themselves what is in the interest of their country.
In an interview that lasted 40 minutes and contained 20 questions, the only committed statement he made was this: "I do not know what is in Nasser's mind." Much less cautious is Prince Mohammed, who reflects publicly, many people think, what his father, the king, feels privately.
We can see what is happening in Egypt, we can see what is happening in Saudi Arabia and other areas which are following similar lines. In Egypt, the economic situation is very bad. There is a lot of adventurism in the development program. Sometimes they do things on the spur of the moment. But when you take the overall, you find that we are going at a much faster rate, really. And really, I think that we are accomplishing a revolution here. We are accomplishing it over 10 years instead of over in the early morning of the daytime.
The philosophies represented by Egypt on the one hand and Saudi Arabia on the other seem to be in total opposition, and it seems to some people that a head-on clash is perhaps unavoidable.
There is always that possibility. I don't like to say that we will resort to force, but and I don't like to say that Egypt is going to resort to force, because I think we both have a lot to lose in this.
Do you think there is any undue significance to be attached to the recent visit to Cairo of the Russian Prime Minister, Mr. Kosygin? Do you think it means perhaps that the Russians are preparing for another initiative to penetrate into the Middle East?
I think they have succeeded in recent years in penetrating the Middle East. The new visit of Mr. Kosygin to the area was, I think, trying to consolidate this penetration.
Do you think part of what you call this consolidation process is in preparation for the Russians to attempt to get their hands on the oil here?
I think that's one of their objectives. Another objective is the warm water ports that they need, which has been a constant ambition of the Russia. And this, definitely, I think they will try hard to go and get it.
All in all, the signs would appear to point to a very crucial 5 years for the Middle East now.
I would say so, and I would like to point something else, is that the dangers of